All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to our April 2022 Charlotte area SharePoint user group meeting. My name is Andy, and I'm going to walk you through the new shared channels in Microsoft Teams, which is currently rolling out in public preview as of April 2022. A little bit about the Charlotte area SharePoint user group as we get started. We are based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We are online, virtual, hybrid, and hopefully at some point we will go back to an in-person hybrid scenario, but we'll see how things shake out with that in the near future. We are active on a number of different channels. The main place that you can find us is actually on Meetup. That's our primary site. So ksig.org will redirect to Meetup. That's one of our active communities. But we are engaged on other social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. We even have an internal Yammer community, but not a lot of activity there anymore as we've transitioned mainly into Meetup. So feel free to follow us on the social media channels. If anybody needs a link to any of those, please let me know. I'm happy to provide that and get you connected in to those social media channels. We try to host a meeting about the third or fourth Thursday of every single month. We are always looking for new content, new speakers, and new things to talk about. So if you're interested, reach out and we will work with getting you engaged with the community. One of the things that we've adopted here over the last couple of years is that we do record our meetings and we post those on our YouTube channel, which I'm going to show you now. Easiest way to find a lot of our recordings is actually on YouTube. So bit.ly/CASUGYT, KSIG YouTube. We post all the recordings over there. We are active with the comments. We do try to respond to those comments, and we've seen a ton of growth there over the last year or so. So we're really excited about growing over there. But we like to take the information that we share and share it even further. So please feel free to engage with us over in YouTube. And if you miss a meeting, no problem. You can go and you can catch it on our YouTube recordings. So that is out there. Want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And feel free to hit that subscribe button so we can grow this community. So that's the main overview of who we are and what the Charlotte area SharePoint user group does. We started off with SharePoint, but we specialize in all things Microsoft 365. So we got a pretty broad user base. So with that, today we're here to talk about shared channels in Microsoft Teams. My name's Andy. I'm actually going to be your presenter here today. I've helped lead this group for a long time now. I think going back to like 2014, 15, somewhere in there. But I've been engaged in the Microsoft community going all the way back to 2010. This is a feature that I'm really excited about because this is going to address one of the big needs that we have in Teams and some of the limitations of Teams, and that deals with things like tenant switching, connecting org to org, connecting tenant to tenant, and being able to provide a seamless collaborative experience, because right now there's a lot of friction, but Microsoft's working on that. So let's just kind of dive in and we'll go from there. So the first thing we're going to cover here is what are shared channels. Just high level, what I want to talk about today are what are shared channels, and then some of the nuances and some of the need that shared channels are going to fill moving forward. That's going to kind of allow Microsoft's vision as they continue to build and add functionality into Teams. So we'll start off with what shared channels are. Then I'm going to do a demo on it to show you some of the ins and outs of using shared channels. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the setup that's involved with it. And there is some administrative setup and overhead that you will need to be mindful of. But a shared channel is a way for you to connect org to org, or even within an organization from team to team, and it gives you a shared workspace. It's like a private channel, but it has more connective capabilities. A private channel is basically for people that are inside of your organization, or maybe a guest that's already connected in with a team. A shared channel is going to allow you to work with people inside and outside of your organization, but to do so in a much more streamlined capacity. And it's going to give you more capabilities than what a guest would normally have if they were connecting into one of your teams as a guest. So it's going to give them kind of that first-class citizen collaborative experience. They're going to be able to participate in posts and conversations. They're going to be able to participate in the experience of sharing files and managing content. They're going to be able to work with the tabs and the other information. So they're going to get collaboration, communication, and content management in there. And the best part about shared channels is it's going to minimize your requirements to switch orgs to get a good experience. So we'll talk more about that in just a minute. So shared channels allows us to go org to org. So a couple of questions, a couple of things I just want to address up front. Who is going to be able to share a channel? Well, that's limited to channel owners. The owner of the channel is going to be the one that can set the who they can share with. We do have some team policies on top of this we'll get into in just a little bit, but the channel owner is going to be able to determine who the channel is shared with, whether it's internal or whether it's external to the org, but admin settings are going to trump some of that. Who can create it? Well, the owner is going to be able to create it. The team owner, they're going to be able to create the shared channel. And then when they create that, they are the channel owner as well. So this is really pushing it into that team owner capacity. And again, we have some admin controls around that. And then one other big thing that you need to keep in mind is where the channel is created, that becomes the host team. And there's a lot of implications with that. If the channel is created in my tenant is the host. That means my tenant's policies, my tenant's security and compliancy are going to apply. If I'm invited into a shared channel and it's hosted in another tenant, they're the host. That means their tenant settings, their team's policies, their security and compliance is going to apply for that particular shared channel. So where it's created matters because that becomes the host and the host team. And then in turn, team's policy, security, and compliance are going to push down to anybody that joins in with that. So the hosts are going to be the ones that control everything. They turn the lights on and off as needed. All right, so with that, first thing I'm going to go into a demo in just a minute and walk through it. But right now, here in August of 2022, this is currently in public preview, and as of some messaging that I saw here recently, Microsoft has said that this is rolled out to 100% of public preview worldwide. They started rolling this out a little while ago, about 6 weeks ago or something. And you need to sign up for Microsoft Teams public preview. So I wanted to give some instruction on actually how you do that. For an admin, you have the ability to go in and you can choose the update policy for users in your tenant. And with that, you can enable a preview mode. That preview mode allows a user to switch from their normal experience into preview features when they need it, and then back down to the normal experience later on. And the great thing about this is that you can do this on a user by user basis. You don't have to apply it to an entire set of your organization unless you want to. So through those Teams admin policies, you're going to be able to turn this on. So let me just take a moment. We're going to go into the admin center for one of my tenants. I'm going to show you the public preview feature where you would actually enable that. And then I'm going to show you from a user experience how you actually switch over into it so you can start experiencing it. So I've got a couple of different tenants that I'm going to be working with today. This is one of my demo tenants, and you can see I've already logged into this particular tenant. I'm logged in as Andy, and I also I'm already joined up to a shared channel. There is a time a factor in this. So if you're going to try to demo something like this, you're going to need to set it up a couple of days ahead of time because it does take a number of hours for some of these features, the preview features to roll out, and then the shared channel features to roll out. So you're going to want to set this up ahead of time. But the first things first, this user is already logged in and they're already set up as public preview. So how do we do that? So we actually have to go into our team's policies in order to manage this. We've got the global policy set up here, and then we have to apply a policy to a user in order for this to take effect. So I'm going to go into my preview user that I'm using for this demo. And this will just show the policies that are associated with it. So I'm looking at my Andy policy here, and these are the assigned policies. And you'll see most of this is assigned because of the global org-wide default that's there. But the one that we're actually concerned with is going to be your update policy, which is listed right here. Now, I've got my global update set so that I can apply this policy to all these users because this is just a demo tenant for me. But in a production environment, you're going to have probably not a global update policy set. You're probably going to have a specific, like a preview policy set for a small number of users. So the update policy is actually what we're concerned with. With the update policy, you have the option to not enable this. You can set this up to follow the office preview, or you can enable public preview. So mine's actually set to enable public preview for all of my users, but you need to set that update policy for that. And then for the user itself, you're just going to go find the user. And then with that, you've got your policies, and then you would be able to edit. And then, like, say, for example, the update policy, if you had a second one, like a preview policy, you would just switch that over to the preview policy for that user. Now, as far as this works from like the policy settings, we've got our, like, I've got a global setting here, but if I were to go in and add an additional policy in this, I would give it a name, apply it, and then I would be able to define some of the settings that go along with that. So that's going to be the first part of it. Just make sure you've got the update policy set to the public preview. Then once that's done, that's going to take a few hours to roll out. So go do something for the afternoon. Come back tomorrow, and it might be ready. From the user's experience, once you're in that public preview, you log in to Microsoft Teams. But what you're going to do is you're going to go to the More Options menu up here. And in the About section, you're going to have to switch into the public preview. And when you do that, you're going to get a little P in the upper right-hand corner of your user icon, and that's going to tell you that you are enabled in public preview, which flags the public preview features and allows you to start working with them and testing them. So we got to go through those steps first. And you'll see when I enabled public preview here, it also threw on developer preview. Those very closely aligned, but they are actually two separate sets of preview features. So I'm logged in here. I've got public preview turned on, and that's going to give me the ability to work with teams. And then I can do things like maybe go into a team, and then I would be able to add a channel. And then from there, I would be able, in this case, be able to create a shared channel. And then once I've got the share channel set up, I can start sharing it with people. And I'll come back to this in just a little bit. But if we look inside of this team that I host inside of this organization, this demo organization, I now have marketing set up as a share channel. And then I've just got another one I created called share channels as a demo. And that's going to allow me to manage the membership or manage this channel and manage who's going to have access to it, either within my team or across teams within the organization or across different tenants and different organizations. Now, I've got my team that I'm hosting here, but I'm also a member of a shared channel in another team that's hosted by another organization. And that's what we're actually seeing over here. So this is the business solutions workshop that's hosted in my Andy tenant, which is another demo tenant that I have. And I created a shared channel there, also called marketing, but it tells me here that number one, this is hosted in the William Huneycutt Andy tenant. And it tells me that marketing is external. So it does have a couple of clear identifiers that I am connecting to a shared channel that's hosted in another organization. Now, I know in that other organization that there are many more channels associated with this particular team, but I only invited this one user to this one shared channel. And so they're able to participate in here. They can see any posts and any files, any other thing that I share, but they're not able to see any of the other channels that are in that other team. So like if I switch over to that other team, 1 second, just find that window real quick. So what happens when you have too many windows open? All right, so I'm just going into that Andy tenant. All right, so I'm over here, right here. All right, so I'm in the Andy tenant now, and if I go over here and I look at the business solutions workshop, I've got a few other channels there, and then I've got this marketing channel that's going to show up when, let me refresh all this. All right, so there's the marketing channel, and you can see the other channels are there. They're available for members of this tenant, but the marketing channel is the only one that's actually shared across tenants in this case. Now, the first couple of questions that I had when it came to this is, how are these shared channels architected? Are they similar to like private channels? So, like for instance, I've got a whole bunch of teams over here. Let me see if I can just find one, like right here. Uh, so looking at this SharePoint Fest team that I created last year, I've got a general channel and then I've got a private channel here called admin team. And if you actually view the admin team, the private channel, and you view that in SharePoint, it's actually a separate SharePoint site on the back end. So you can see it's a completely separate site. Like if I go to just the general channel and I open that up in SharePoint, so like everything general in any other standard channels are actually in this site here, SPFest Chicago 2021. But if I go up to this private channel, SPFest Chicago 2021, this is the collaboration channel. So private channels separate content out into a separate SharePoint site. So every time I create a private channel in a team, there's that separate site that actually backs it up. And what we're going to find is with shared channels is actually a similar architecture. So I'm going to go into this uh, business solutions workshop here. And so these are all of my standard channels, channel 1, 2, general, and so forth. So I've got some standard channels that are part of this. But when I go back to that marketing site, or that marketing channel rather, that's shared right here, and I open that in SharePoint, that's actually on its own standalone site as well. So from an architecture standpoint, shared channels and private channels are created or create a private SharePoint site on the back end, and they're not associated with the standard um, channels and the site that's there. So they're compartmentalized in that capacity. So that's something to keep in mind from a management standpoint. Now, additionally, when I'm thinking about this, like I'm wondering, like, what kind of management tools are we going to have over that from like maybe the SharePoint Admin Center? So that's another consideration. I know private channels are starting to be visible through the SharePoint Admin Center. I have not seen shared channels there yet, but we'll check on that in just a little bit. But within the context of the site, a couple other questions that I have as we kind of dive into it is, you've got the access to this particular site. So like I've got this marketing channel set up here and I've shared it across tenants. So I'm in the Andy tenant. Let's switch back over to the other tenant, which is this one right here. So there's the business solution workshops. It's external to this organization because I'm logged in as Andy at this demo tenant over here. And so what I want to see is, do I have access to that SharePoint site? So I open in SharePoint, and I do. I'm in a separate tenant. It tells me clearly up here, external, as part of a shared channel in the upper right-hand corner, but I do have access to that SharePoint site, even on the other tenant over there. But the visualization in the upper corner is very much welcome, and the icons telling me this is connected to Teams and go to the channel. Those things are also very much welcome. But the architecture is very similar to the private channels and the way that they created these as standalone back-end SharePoint sites, and then automatically passing my access from one tenant over to the other in order to get to that site and to have the full functionality of SharePoint, the full functionality inside of Teams as like a member rather than in the guest capacity, kind of joining over. And one other thing to point out about all of this, the only thing that I did from a switching standpoint is I have two browser windows open. I have one that's got my Andy tenant up here, and then I've got one that's got my demo tenant down here. But at no point did I have to switch tenants, like manually switching, going up here and logging in and out. So that for me is a real game changer. I'm able, in this case, to stay in my Andy tenant and work across with colleagues from another organization, or I'm able to work in my demo tenant and access things in that other organization. And I'm not signing in and signing out of Microsoft Teams. Now, I am using browser profiles because I'm showing you the perspective of two separate users. But in a real world scenario, you could just be logged in as your user, go in Teams, there's your channel, and you're in, and you've got your content, and you don't have to switch back and forth between all of those separate tenants. You don't have to go from this tenant to this tenant over here in order to get that information. So that was really, really helpful. And I think that's going to be something a lot of people are really excited about. Now, there's a few more setup things that I need to talk about. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint for just a little bit. We're going to talk about those additional setup things, and then we'll kind of continue from there. So public preview turned on first. That's how you can create it initially. But once the public preview is turned on, the channel is actually there. You can actually sign out of public preview. And actually, let me go here and do that. So like I'm going to go to my public preview. I can sign out of public preview. So the P is gone. I'm no longer in public preview, but I still have access to the shared channels. Once they're created, they're still available even after public preview turns off. The only thing that I can't do is once I've left public preview, I don't have the ability anymore to create new shared channels, but I can use the shared channels that are actually there. So I'm going to go back into public preview. It'll refresh. And then if I need to add a channel, share channel shows up. So creating them is the public preview feature, but actually working in them after that, I found in testing that that's actually open, which is helpful. All right, so public previews needed to create it. Again, when you turn on public preview, go through the admin center, then log or give it a few hours, and then log in with your user, and then you should be able to potentially start your experience. But there's a few more caveats that we need to set up, and most of these are going to be done in our admin centers. So we'll start with the Teams admin center, and we'll work out from there. In the Teams admin center, we have Teams policies. And in the Teams policies, that's going to be used to control settings and features that apply to globally, everyone, or to a subgroup. I would create like a subgroup of policies around this to test it out initially. Now, one of the things that you're going to find is that these features over here, create private channels, share channels, invite external users, and join external share channels, these are all turned on by default. So if you're an admin and you want control over this, you're going to need to go into your team's policy. You're going to need to adjust this manually or create a separate policy to turn these on for a subgroup. But these things are all turned on by default. So create share channels on by default, invite external users, and join external share channels. All of those are enabled by default, but you can you have the ability to turn those on or off. So just going back to the Teams admin center, and I'll go to this one first. All right, so this is my demo tenant, Teams policies, global policies. So again, Teams policies and global policies, and you'll see all of those are already turned on. And it was in both tenants, it was exactly the same. So again, you could create a separate policy and you could turn this off on maybe the global and then just apply this to a subset of your users. But Microsoft went ahead and took the opportunity to enable this for everybody. All right, so that's one place where you're going to be able to control the creation of shared channels within the organization. And again, on it global, but you can create your sub policies and apply that to your users as needed. Now, the next thing, and you're going to need a global administrator or a security administrator to work with this, is Azure AD B2B Direct Connect. This is actually a new feature. It's in preview right now. It's been rolling out for quite a while, and it sits side by side with the B2B collaboration. This is all part of Microsoft Connect. This feature needs to be enabled for us to allow connection between organizations. And it's actually fairly straightforward. It's pretty easy. Like once you get into it and you toggle the switches once or twice, but we have to turn on the cross-tenant access settings, which are in preview, and that's going to enable us to connect tenant to tenant. The default settings are to block all external organizations, but we can enable or allow those connections, and we can choose to allow inbound and outbound inside of here. So for example, we could set it outbound only. We can join shared channels of another organization, but we're not going to have anybody joining in our organization. Or we could allow inbound and outbound. We can create shared channels and invite people into it, or we can join shared channels that an external entity has. But in order to do this particular piece, we have to go through Azure Active Directory. You have to be a global administrator or a security administrator in order to access it. So let me just walk you through that process. All right, so I'm going to go in this particular user, and then I'm going to go to portal.azure.com. All right, so I'm logged in here. I'm looking for Azure Active Directory, which is this guy right over here. And then what I'm looking for is external identities. All right, so we'll let this load. It'll take just a second. And in external identities, once I get into this, and it's just on the side, we're looking for cross-tenant access settings. And that takes me to this screen right here. Now, I use this tenant a whole lot for production, so I'm not going to show the rest of it here in this tenant, but let me switch over to the other one. And so same process. You go into external identities, cross-tenant access settings, and this brings me to the preview area, and we got organizational settings, and then we got the default settings. We're going to start with default first. All right, so in here, I have two areas that I'm concerned with. I'm inbound access and outbound access, and specifically, we're looking for inbound access for B2B Direct Connect, and then we're looking for outbound access for B2B Direct Connect. So this is what's going to allow us to connect org to org. So we're going to start with the inbound. I'm going to click edit here. And then right away, it takes me into B2B collaboration, but we want direct connect settings. So we're going to switch over to the second tab. The first time you visit this, it should be set to block access for external users and groups. So I'm going to allow external user and groups. That's going to allow, in this case, inbound people outside of my organization to join a shared channel. I can do that for users and groups, and then I can set that for applications. Once I make those settings, I'm going to click Save. That's going to set my inbound and allow people into my organization. Now, going back to the external identities, I would repeat the same process for the outbound settings here. Edit outbound defaults. I'm going to go to B2B Direct Connect for users and groups. If I want to allow my people to join an organization shared channel, I'm going to say allow. And then external applications, I'm going to say allow there as well. That's going to allow my people to connect external. So then we've got it set up. So then we've got our direct connect for external users and groups and applications. And then we got outbound for external users or for users and groups and applications. So we have to set that up in Azure Active Directory. I did it here. We're recording this. It'll be available. But there's a ton of blogs out there that are starting to walk through this process. And Microsoft actually made this part pretty easy. But again, keep in mind, you need to be global or security admin. Now, a couple other things that we need to be aware of here that are actually pretty important. We went into default settings right away, and we started working with inbound and outbound. But the primary destination there is organizational settings. This is a consideration and conversation you're going to need to have with your security and compliance teams on how you want to handle this. Do you want to allow shared channels with all external organizations? By going into the default settings and setting like inbound and outbound, users can essentially send invites or receive invites from anybody. It's open. So this is a wide open door as soon as you turn on those default settings. Users still have to accept the invite to join, or they have to send the invite out to an external entity for them to join. But that's the first major hurdle, is setting this default settings. But from an org standpoint, you might want to limit this to just specific domains. So you're actually going to use the organization settings. You're going to add an organization. You're going to look that up based off of a tenant ID. And then you're going to be able to allow inbound or outbound to just that organization, but not all organizations. But as it stands, without doing that, this is open. So it's going to allow you to connect with any external org. The user can send an invite to joe@company.com or susie@company.com, and then they can join that shared channel and they can participate. But also your users, user@mycompany.com, could receive an invite to join Joe's org or to join Susie's org and participate in shared channels over there. As soon as you add a single org, you limit that open door, and now you're using those restricted specific domains moving forward. So open by default, add one. Now you're using restricted specific domains, and then you have to add them to the list. And as soon as you go to add an organization, it's pretty straightforward. It's going to ask you for a tenant ID. So you would go in and add an organization here. It's going to say, find this tenant. So you'll start entering in that information. You can type in like the domain name, and it'll start to look it up, or you can enter the tenant ID and then you can connect. Looking at my demo tenant here, I'm wide open. That means based off of the settings that I defined, my users can freely invite external people into those shared channels, and they can freely join those external shared channels as well. So a couple of considerations there from the Azure Active Directory space that you need to be aware of. All right, so that's the main setup that that goes along with it. Once you've got that in place, from there, what you're going to find is that people that are participating in your shared channels are going to have a member-like experience. So let me actually switch over to this tenant real quick. All right, and so I'm going to go in and I'm in my demo tenant. I'm connecting to Andy's tenant. There's the marketing external right over there, and I can look at manage the channel. So a couple things to be aware of. Shows me who the owner is. Andy created it, so Andy's actually the owner. Shows me any of the who the members are, and in this case, me. I'm listed as a member there as part of my demo tenant, and then it shows me any teams. This is the team coming from Andy's tenant right over here. It tells me there's 25 people that are a part of that team that are actually a part of this particular shared channel. And I have the ability to kind of hide, and I can view a couple of things with this. So let's go and take a look at it from the Andy side of the house and what we see over there. All right, so this is the team, and this is the shared channel. All right, so I'm just going to manage the channel. All right, so same information going to show up over here. So Andy's team is the main 25 members, and then this person's external, clearly identifying them as external. It's added them in a member role, and then I can add or remove them as needed. Andy, though, can go in and he can view any invites that have been sent out, and then I have my settings. So my member permissions, what can members do in this particular shared channel? Ad mentions, and then the fun stuff. So some of the same moderation that we have on channels otherwise, it's going to happen over here. But I also have the main team itself, and I can manage that independently of that shared channel. So I'm the owner, and then these are all the people that are actually part of that team normally. Now, from a creation standpoint, when we go through this, a couple of things to point out. So I'm going to add a channel here. All right, so I would go in, we would give this, so this is going to be our project management team, and Andy is not in public preview, so I would need to switch him over before I add him to that. So let me do this. Let me go over here to this guy, and I'll do it as a part of this. So I'll add the channel in this one. All right, project management, and then I can do this as the shared channel, and then I can create it. All right. Now type the name of someone in your organization that you want to add to this channel. You can also add people outside of your organization by typing in the email address. So if there's somebody that's like internal to this organization, and all of these users are internal. So if I wanted to add one of those users to this particular shared channel, I could go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to share this person's part of my organization so they can be an owner or a member because they're part of my org. All right, so now I've got the project management. Now I'm going to go back to the more options here, and then I have share this channel. And when I click on this, this is similar to when you go to like a team and you want to add a member. It's kind of similar to that menu, but the difference that I want to point out here is you can share it with people, you can share with a team, and you can share with a team that you own. All right, so let's say people. I click on that, and this is the menu that we just saw. So this would allow me people that are internal, but also maybe somebody that is external. So like I can add this external entity, and I can share that with Andy from that other organization. And so now I can share very quickly external. Now, I'm also going to go back and say share this channel and with a team. That one's interesting. So let's say with a team. All right, so now it's saying this person will accept the invite on behalf of their team. If the person is outside of your org, type their email address. All right, so I'm going to send this to Andy external. All right, and then I'm going to send that invite. All right, so that's going to send that over to my Andy account. I got a couple of things in activity over here. So I'm going to go and view my activity feed. So the first thing I see in my Andy tenant is, okay, it's asking, do you want to sign in and accept joining this demo tenant over here? They're going to receive your profile data, log your activity, manage your profile and activity. I'm going to accept that. All right, so that just tells me what's happening over there. And so now I've joined that one channel as just Andy. But I also have this invite over here and it says, hey, your whole team was invited to this shared channel. So do you want to allow your whole team here in the Andy org to go and participate in the project management channel that's over in that other org? And I can accept or decline on behalf of my entire team. Well, pick a team that you want to add to that that external shared channel. So this gives like a whole lot of flexibility. They only need me as a point of contact, the other org. They only need me as a point of contact. And then I can accept on behalf of an entire team that I actually own, which is really helpful. So if I need to do collaboration in my marketing team with their marketing team, I can add my whole marketing team in one fell swoop and then just manage my members on my side. And as people come and go, like it'll pass over to that other org. I think that's awesome. That's going to be really, really helpful for adding this bulk users. All right. And then going back to this project management team, I'm going to share this channel. All right. So I did with a team. And we just determined that's across org. But what about a team that you own? So this is going to allow me to share this channel that I have, or this shared channel in my org with another team in my org. So I can go across and I can say, well, I want the members of this X5 training team, I want them to be able to access this shared channel, manage their membership in the X5 training team, but have them to be able to work in this particular workspace. So those are the three options that you're going to get there. People, internal or external, a team, external, and one person can accept on behalf on the other end, or a team internal to your org, but you manage the membership over on that other side. So that's all going to be super helpful. And then from there, what I found in testing is that I'm not switching back and forth between tenants in order to get back and forth. Like I receive notifications across the two tenants. So like let's go back in to the team. Let me just refresh this. I don't know why that Little bug keeps showing up. So I'm going to go in here. Let's try to start a conversation. Hey, at William Huneycutt external. And then I'm just going to also go in. I'm going to upload a file from my local computer. Let me just grab something. All right. And then I'll go ahead and send that. All right. So I sent that over, and right away, this person's already received a notification, didn't have to switch tenants. They were at mention. They can go ahead and reply, switching back over. And just like that, seamless communication. This person can also go ahead and respond, reply however they want. Can't type. And just like that, we're communicating across tenants without switching. We're sharing content. We're sharing files across tenants. We're receiving notifications across tenants. It's a really seamless experience, and I'm really excited for that. From a use case standpoint, I work in an organization and we're undergoing a few different mergers at the present time. So being able to seamlessly connect to those people in one of the merging orgs as they're in their Microsoft tenant, as we're completing migration, and having them have a first class experience here, just like a normal member or guest, I think that's going to be a huge, huge game changer. So I'm really excited to actually see that. I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive on the meeting experience. I've got a feeling I'm going to be doing that with a colleague of mine coming up on a 365 deep dive with John Moore and myself. I'm hoping to do that here in the near future. I want to see just what the meeting experience across the tenants is going to be like. High level testing, it was very comparable to being a member within the org and having a channel meeting. So I'm excited to do a little bit more on that. But that's what I've got for shared channels. There's a lot to unpack there. If anybody wants the PowerPoint, I'll make that available. There's a couple of really good blogs out there. If anybody is interested in some of those walkthroughs, I'll make those available. I know Dean Gross had a question around the sensitivity labels. I have seen some documentation on that. Sensitivity labels are supported security and compliance center settings. If you think about this from an Azure Active Directory, sensitivity, compliance, and security in the middle, and then Teams policies, that's the process that you'll need to go through in order to determine whether this applies granular or whole to the entire organization, or if you need to narrow it down to a subset within the organization. Again, Azure Active Directory, security and compliance, and then Teams policies in that order. So with that, I'm going to turn things over now for any Q&A for anything that we've seen here today. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer those. Well, I'm going to wrap the recording here, but I'm going to stick around for a few more minutes just in case any conversation or any questions happen. Want to thank everyone for your attention, for being here today. Hope you found this helpful. We will post this on our YouTube channel, Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group. We're on YouTube. We got a vanity URL there. But I will post the video there hopefully in the next day or two as soon as the recording is actually done. So thanks everybody, and I'm going to stick around just in case there are any other questions or comments.